All right, y'all, welcome to the next lighting setup and look. We are gonna do book light. So book light is a fantastic setup, again, for a really soft source, something super complementary to our subjects. This is something you're gonna be utilizing with an uplifting and more optimistic style of piece. So again, typically gonna be seeing this with commercial style work, corporate style work, maybe event coverage, and a lot of beauty-based work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and start setting up my book light setup. And so the idea of a booklight setup is really quite literally like trying to create a book, if you will. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fly out this C-stand here and just utilize this to really kind of shitty rig, hold in position this bounce board for me. So I'm gonna cheat this as close to the subject as possible. Now I've had it in frame just a little bit, so I'm gonna cheat it back just ever so slightly. Bam. All right, so we've got this pointed towards our subject here. This is the first aspect and part of our book light setup. So what we're going to do is I'm going to remove this soft light source, aka utilizing this softbox and honeycomb grid, and I'm gonna throw a dish on this light. And then I'm gonna bounce it off the board. And then we'll take it over from there. So let me just get this all set up here, and then we'll kind of continue from there, guys. All right, so flying this down. Watch your eyes here, guys. Pulling this off. Really bright, strong source, as you're seeing with camera A and camera B here. I'm coming back here. Got a list of options of different attachments we could use. Again, I am using the dish. And I'm gonna throw this on here. Again, this is just preventing the light from spilling out so much. Again, right now it is just so out of control. It is literally shooting everywhere within this space, but now we've got a much more controlled light. So now I've got the dish on there. I'm gonna really aim this directly at my bounce. Pull this bounce back a little bit further as well. The next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab some diffusion. So this is the second aspect of our book here. We are going to utilize this diffusion here. And let me just get this strung through here. And so what we are essentially doing to create this book-like look, the idea of a book-like look is really creating a book. So if you kind of come over here real quick, Christian, just so they can really see us formulating the book quite literally here. So literally thinking like a book that is being opened up, right? So our light source is going to be hitting and bouncing here, and I'm gonna take it more directionally right on. And again, the closer I can get, the stronger it's gonna give us that bounce. And then from here, I'm gonna really need to turn this just a little bit so we can get a nice soft source. Now, the next part I really need to do, it just doesn't feel so low, as you guys can kind of see in the image right now. We can tell like our light source feels like it's bottom coming up. And so what I'm going to do is now fly the bounce board up as well. So that way when we're bouncing, we're hitting more of a level and even plane. And so our light is gonna match that rather than the current look you guys are seeing in that image. So I'm gonna take some clips and I'm going to clip this bounce board up just a little bit higher. So I've got some clamps here. Use these A clamps. And clip this guy on. One of the beautiful aspects of bounce boards is they're pretty damn cheap, very cost effective, so you don't have to be too nice and generous with them. They are not hard to purchase again. So I'm gonna reformulate this book. Reposition the light. Get it as close as possible. There we are. Fly this up just a little bit higher. Oh, come on, baby. There we are. All right. All right. Now, the last little aspect I'm gonna do is utilize 2 more clamps just to really close off this book light here. And this is really like more of like a safety measure, if you will. I just wanna make sure none of the light is really streaking through and going right into camera. It's just gonna really create a really hazy, airy effect where we lose a lot of the shaping and contrast and such in our image. So now taking a look over here again, I'm gonna jump into white balance. Excuse me, not white balance, false color. And so we're looking at false color. And as you can tell, we're a little hot right now. And so options are, I could go changing my aperture or could really just take this down a bit. And so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna turn this down. It was at 42%. I'm gonna go about 28% here and settle right there. So we've got 28%. And again, if I'm going for a booklight look, this is a nice, really soft light. As you can see, like it's really, really nice highlight roll off. As we go from the highlight to the shadow side, like there's no really defined lines or area on David's face. It's just a really nice, slow, smooth roll off. Again, if I'm gonna do a booklight, it's typically because I'm going for a really nice complementary look. And so with something like that in mind, I might again wanna fly in a fill light and turn that on just a little bit, just so I can get a little less shadow. And so, get this back, 55, go to dim. I'm gonna turn this up ever so slightly. Bam, and now we've got some really nice even lighting. Pull this back out of our frame. But as you can see now, we've got a really nice, evenly lit image. We've got a little bit of shadow still, a little bit of shaping, but overall it's just a really nice, even image. However, again, being intentional, knowing why we're setting these up. What are you going for? What is the look you want? And so for me, I'm almost never using booklight, if I'm being honest. Again, I really love shadows and I love shaping and seeing that contour. For me, that's where I create captivating images, is being able to really shape light. That's what makes the images interesting to me. And so the lack of shape is kind of what steers me away from doing a setup like this, from utilizing booklight. It is a nice setup. It is really complementary to your subjects. But again, for me, the image tends to be a bit more flat. And the more we can create shape, the more shadows we can kind of create, but still have them be soft and complementary on our subject, the more interesting the image, in my opinion. So again, I'm oftentimes shooting low-key lighting and I'm using a soft source. Those are the main looks I'm going for. I'm not doing high-key lighting and I'm not doing hard sources often. Those are kind of different lighting setups that I really try and stray away from. However, there's a time and place for everything. So this is booklight setup and look. Just to talk about the positioning, angles of degree a little bit more. Again, your fill light is always kind of staying the same in regards to positioning. I always like to keep it around directly 180 degrees to the side of my subject, or I might move it to more of like a 30-degree angle, but it's kind of really sitting within that space. But talking just a little bit further on fill light, I've had this fill light particularly over here, this entire really course and module for you guys. But there's a lot of other options. You know, you don't have to use a tube light as a fill. You can use a practical. So I could bring in a desk or a coffee table of some sort, set that next to my subject and use a practical. And that can act as a fill as well. That practical can create and be our motivating light within the scene, but it can also be a fill light for our subject. Additionally, you know, you can use fill, be that the sun or natural light bleeding through the window. We could shoot this a little bit closer to the window and let that natural light come in as a really nice soft source to be our fill light. So there are a lot of other options and ways you can use fill, but this is just particularly the way I'm using it at this moment in time. And so with that being said, guys, the last little part I want to talk about with the booklight look again is, for me personally, I typically set up the booklight look relatively similar to Rembrandt light in regards to angles of degree. So this is about 45-degree angle to hit in our subject. Very similar to Rembrandt in that sense. Again, booklight, you could really set it up anywhere. You know, you could do a booklight look from the side. But again, it's gonna feel a little awkward because, again, you're creating a really even and soft image. And so it's gonna be most likely counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve if you're going for a side light look. Because in order to make the booklight work, you're gonna have to really crank your illumination up on the light. And when you do that, it's gonna kind of defeat that side light look. There's not gonna be any shadows, not gonna be any drama in your environment because your source is gonna light up the whole space with this really nice, soft and even light source. But again, just if you wanna come over here really quick, Christian, just so everyone can get a final look at it. Again, we are shooting at a 45-degree angle. Now it feels opposite because the light is shooting this way, but again, paying attention to our diffusion. So right here, this is a diffusion sheet, a 5-in-1 flagger, I like to call it. So this is the sheet inside. There are some sheets on the outside which we'll utilize, and I'll display to you guys how to use those in some later developments of this course. But right here, we are using this inner piece as diffusion. And so this is just a flap of white sheet, pure white. And so when the light bounces off this bounce board, it's hitting off the bounce board, bouncing off of there, clearly, and it's going through this source. So rather than shining the light, so just so you guys can see it, I'll shine this light through the diffusion on our subject. Just getting, as you can see, just a very different kind of look. Similar, but different. This is just gonna give you a softer source. Again, we've got more kind of levels changing within the light. By having this bounce, it's gonna allow the light to spread, creating a softer and wider source. And then again, going through the diffusion, again, is gonna make it wider and softer. So this is booklight look, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna move on to the next lighting setup from here.